I do have, I guess, one more question. This is a personal issue for me, which is abortion rights. And I just want to say this background. I used to think it was actually never, ever going to happen. I thought it was abortion bans were a sort of red herring or smoke screen. I mean, just something to distract us. I mean, there are certain elements of like book bans and don't say gay bans and abortion bans that sometimes I think it's meant to scare away Democrats, to make them not feel welcome, to not feel safe, because when they leave, they're not there to vote. And so it's kind of a twisted voter suppression. However, it is becoming more and more real since Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court nominees. And just yesterday, Oklahoma's state legislature passed a total abortion ban, 100%, making it a felony. And so Georgia will come up with these in our future, and we do have to face them. So, how do you feel about this issue, and how do you feel about standing up to the issue, even if you don't have the votes, and voicing a protest?
I agree with you in that, this is starting to get real. This is getting real for women, like, something that we know there is broad agreement on this, that, across party lines, whatever our personal feelings about this, we believe that, the abortion framework of, Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey should stand. And I think it really comes down to, well, before I get to that, I want to talk about HB 481 in Georgia, because we've been there, and so when 481 was passed, that was passed fully knowing it was unconstitutional, fully knowing it was immediately going to get us into court. We would be spending taxpayer money on this. And, that is something our General Assembly did, knowing it was unconstitutional, knowing the physicians of this state were dead set against it, that it was terrible practice. And the women of this state were very much opposed to it as well. And I think what it really comes down to is someone's got to decide. And I will always trust the women of Georgia, my friends, my nieces, I will always trust them to make these intimate decisions for themselves before I will trust the General Assembly. I just don't think it's the business of the state to make those decisions. And I think if we sort of play that tape all the way through and think about what that will look like, if we do give the state that kind of power over these decisions, you can get to some pretty nightmarish scenarios pretty quickly. Every woman has a story. It might not be an abortion story, but every woman has a story. And, we know that we can be trusted, that we should be trusted to make these decisions. I often point out, who do you think is taking care of the children who are already here? We're doing that work predominantly. That's not to say, men aren't doing any. But when it really comes down to it, we do that work, and we can be trusted with this decision. We should be trusted with this decision. And I will never hand this decision off to the state. I think that gets you to some, you can follow that thread to China and North Korea. And when the state starts telling you what you can do with your body, we get way past abortion very quickly. We get into contraception, and we get into, all kinds of things. So this is a decision for the women of Georgia.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's interesting, well, maybe not interesting, surreal, because the predominantly Catholic countries like Mexico and Ireland, which have had abortion illegal this whole time, are now shifting just in the past, let's say 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And we're going backwards, and we're,
yeah. I remember, you bring up Ireland. I remember reading, I think, again, that's one of those areas where there can be broad agreement sometimes, even when you're having policy debates, or even when your policy doesn't reflect your broad agreement. But there was a woman who died because she she was pregnant and it was going to kill her, and she needed to leave the country and get somewhere where she could terminate that pregnancy in order to save her own life, and she died. And that was one of the, and I don't want to get into ranking the reasons for abortion, because I just don't think that's that's the business, but like that's one of those scenarios we go to. And so like for those of us who've had children, like we lie on those tables, we get those transvaginal ultrasounds, we hear those diagnoses from doctors at 18 and 20 weeks. And and of course when you're at 18 and 20 weeks, you're out of the range for having an abortion in a lot of states. So I agree with you. It's crazy to be going backward when other countries are finally coming around to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Raphael Warnock said I can't remember the word he used, the room that you're in, the doctor's room is too large.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
We all know it's even it's just immoral to oppress women, and immoral to own their bodies, immoral to have a room of men who have never been pregnant, who are making decisions about people who have been pregnant. I mean, it's just an inhuman thing to treat women as this object or this cattle to
vessel. Yeah, absolutely.
So it is surreal, but it's our reality. And I think that's kind of one of those things where, it's like, it's unbelievable, and yet we're here. And so you have to pinch yourself. Yes, we're here 50 years after Roe versus Wade. It's a real danger. So, but I do think that, we have enough people that we can fight for this issue. And that's why I led the Women's March in Savannah and organized it, honestly, not because I had to force people to care. I think that was, I don't have any special powers. I cannot snap my fingers and get 1,000 people to show up at Forsyth Park for anything. They have to want to be there. And I just felt like Savannah wanted to be there. And this was really critical and important for people. So it's definitely going to turn around eventually if we keep, feeling pressured by the GOP inching closer and closer.